talking about being storytelling leaders. This is the fourth in a series that I've been doing, and it's about the last kind of story that we can tell as leaders to sharpen vision and shape culture on our team, our organization, wherever we lead or work. We've already talked about vision stories that help people see the future, iconic stories that capture the heart of what we're trying to do, the why, if you will. And we've also talked about campfire stories, which sort of link the past to the present, where people start out with, hey, remember when? And they're really helpful in an organization. So I hope you'll check out those video clips as well. But this is the last one, and it's a personal story. When I was in graduate school, I had moved back into the area outside Philadelphia where I lived, and I went to visit my coach. I had been part of a championship team that he had coached, and it was fun to reconnect. And he said, what are you doing in the area? I said, I'm doing some graduate school work. And he said, hey, in a couple of months, our season starts, and I wonder if you'd be interested in maybe some part-time work. And I thought, okay. He said, how'd you like to coach with me and be one of the assistants? And I thought, this is great. But then I realized, I have graduate school to do. And he said, no, I'm not talking about one of the 3 or 4 top people, on the team. But if you could come and work a few hours a week with the defensive ends, the position you used to play, that would be awesome. And he said, I'll pay you $600. And I said, $600 a week is great. It's perfect. He goes, no, for the season, $600. That's for 10 weeks. And I thought, okay, I'm not doing this one for the money. It was going to be fun. So I show up at practice, and I love working with these guys. And I'm out there, and I'm driving them, and I'm pushing them, and I'm really working these guys. About 3 days into the practice schedule, he calls me into his office, and he says, have a seat. I said, great, how you doing? He goes, good. He goes, can I have a question for you? I said, okay. He goes, whose team are you on? Excuse me? He said, whose team are you on? I said, William Tennant High School team. He goes, it doesn't sound like it. And I just sat there quiet. And he said, Bill, I've been kind of watching you and listening to you, and, you're hollering and you're yelling and you're threatening and rebuking these guys, and you're riding them really hard. And he said, I think you're pushing them away and you're not drawing them in. You almost are like you're working for another team and not our team. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I feel terrible. It's the last thing I wanted. He said, so try to be for them, come alongside them. Yeah, challenge them, but show them that you are with them and you want them to be better. Don't just point out what they're doing wrong, and certainly don't just keep yelling at them and riding them all the time. Well, I had to take that truth really to heart, and it hurt. So I learned in that little vignette a leadership principle about how to be for people, even when you're driving them and pushing toward a goal aggressively, versus being against them, versus pointing out their failures all the time. Now, see, that was a quick personal story, and they're helpful and useful in some kinds of settings, correct? So there's some things about a personal story I want to mention, and this is the reason they connect with people. They, first of all, usually are very authentic because they're your story. You're telling it, and so your natural emotions come in, your heart, and all those things. Second, they show a little vulnerability as a leader, especially if they are about loss or failure or a challenge or a struggle, or when you were first starting out, that kind of place where a lot of people that you're working with are right now. It's also great if it connects to reality, something they can understand. And at the end of the day, maybe provide some hope, maybe lifts their spirits a little bit. So personal stories can be used in a really powerful way. So let's do some talking points about stories in general since we're wrapping up the series. I had promised this at the beginning that I would give you some tips on how to do stories and do them well. First, make them clear and focused, very kind of precise and crisp. Don't wander a whole lot. Try to just get that down to a nice 1 or 2 minutes and tell the story. If you have to practice it 2 or 3 times in your head or whatever you need to do, that would be helpful for some of us. So just make sure it's clear and crisp. Second, short is key. Less is more. A 1 or 2 minute story is better than a rambling 5-minute story, so get it down tight. Third, link it to mission or to purpose. Tell a personal story that raises a value, helps you think about where we're trying to go as an organization, helps people understand a leadership lesson you're trying to teach about their own leadership, but link it to something that you're trying to do together to help people move forward. Fourth, make it relatable. Don't tell stories that are sort of always in one kind of theater or arena that only some certain people can relate to. I worked with someone who all he did was almost tell sailing stories. His personal stories were almost always about that. And you know what? Very few people go sailing. So Don't always use sports stories. Don't always use men's stories or women's stories. Mix it up, young, old, different kinds, if as best as possible. But make them relatable to most people in the group. Fifth, it's okay to be emotional. It's okay to put some energy in it because emotion creates passion and that moves people. Finally, a tip is, people ask, well, when should I use these stories? And you can use them anytime. But I would say at the beginning or at the end of a meeting is a great time to tell any kind of story we've talked about, whether it's iconic or campfire or vision or personal. Don't ever have a meeting without using a story. Capture something at the beginning or the end, because at the end, a lot of times it's, well, let's wrap up. It's been a good meeting, blah, 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 blah. We're kind of that. People are closing notebooks and putting, phones out to do things. And that's not how you want to end. If you say, hey, you guys got a minute? Yesterday, I was standing down this hallway, and you won't believe what I saw in an interaction with one of our clients and one of our salespeople. And if I do that, every head goes like this. Because the story captures people, so don't miss out on the ability to use stories. So that's my question. Having done this series, are you going to use stories to sharpen vision and move people to action? I hope so. It's been a good series. I hope you're a better leader as a result.